People who fetishized a city or country, like NYC or Japan, and then actually took a leap of faith to move there. How has your opinion changed since? I'm from Canada, and I moved to France. It was incredibly overwhelming and I didn't last long. I was also pretty young, and hadn't been to Europe before. I applaud myself for giving it a shot. But I'd like to go back, and create better memories. Also, I didn't stay in Paris, I went directly out to Normandy. It was beautiful, but I was placed with a family that wasn't particularly sensitive to the fact that I came all the way from North America. They had other students stay with them from Europe, but I was the most foreign. This post has taught me the big problem with any place is the people. Hawaii. It is absolutely gorgeous. Had land there, and spent time there during the downturn. The tourist thing wears off though, and although it is still an absolutely gorgeous place, the cost of living, the corruption in government, and seemingly like every contractor is trying to rip you off spoiled it for me as a long-term relo. I was obsessed with Japan when I was in high school, and my mom sent me there for an exchange year. At the time Japan was known as a country with advanced technology and I had read that the taxis had doors that opened for the passenger. I thought it would be something like the Back to the Future/Tesla Model X doors. The biggest disappointment was that it was just a lever the driver pulls, and it's an ordinary car. I had also read up a lot about a culture of perfection where even stray leaves were removed from gardens, meals were perfectly balanced to the seasons, people were modest, and crime was low. As a 16-year-old schoolgirl I was molested twice walking home. My wallet was stolen. My host family preferred eating McDonald's. They had televisions running in every room of their house every waking hour and I was made fun of for reading books. I was supposed to be there for a year, but was so homesick I left 3 months early. To be fair, a lot of that was because of my host family. We were pretty poorly matched. I later went to work in Hokkaido when I finished uni, and had a great time there as the people are a lot more relaxed. I also really liked my school, and particularly my tea ceremony teacher who was an amazingly talented and kind lady. I now work for a Japanese company, and my colleagues and boss are great. Los Angeles, the city where dreams come true. Growing up in a small rural city in SoCal, I would dream of being in a place of tall buildings, bustling energy, and all-night excitement. I moved here 10 years ago, and it is much different than expected. Expectation: I'd see celebrities everywhere. Reality: they are everywhere, but mostly just want to be left alone, and aren't that exciting in person. Also, I get diarrhea of the mouth, and have never said anything good. Exception: Janice Dickinson once sang happy birthday to my husband in a very breathy Marilyn Monroe way. Expectation: everyone is working on something major. Reality: everyone is working on something that they think is major. Your Uber driver, the homeless guy down the street, your landlord, and your boss. Everyone wants to talk about or recruit you for their next big thing, and can pay an exposure. Exception: I do see a lot of people I know on TV, and that's cool. But I also know that they are also just as skinned as I have been. Expectation: anything can happen at any time. Reality: terrible things happen all the time. Waiting at a crosswalk while the guy next to me pulls down his pants, and starts pooping on the sidewalk. Dodging a psychotic weirdo swinging a 2x4 without skipping a beat. I have deleted the Citizen app because of too many alerts in my neighborhood. Exception: I have looked into gigs that I was in no way prepared or worked for. Expectation: it's expensive. Reality: it's really freaking expensive. Exception: few to none. Sometimes I get free drinks. Expectation: it's full of fake people. Reality: it's full of people trying to make rent. Some of those people are fake, and still trying to make rent. Exception: there's a strong undercurrent of working class people who just want to work, go home, watch The Office, and eat a homemade meal. LA is not as bad as people warn it is, but it's definitely not all Beverly Hills. Even Beverly Hills isn't as good as Beverly Hills. It's dirty, it's hectic, it's gentrifying fast. But it's something different than home at least. I wanted to go to New Zealand since I was 10, and my best friend moved there. I finally went when I was 25, and got a 1-year working visa. It was awesome. I met my husband there, and saw my old friend again. It's still great. I would live there if they'd have me. It was Finland for me. Rather weird country to obsess about, but I started learning the language in high school, and fell in love with the culture. Went there for an exchange, and was shocked at how close to paradise it was. Beautiful nature, friendly, and helpful people, good quality food, and more humane pace of life. It helped that I lived with a wonderful host family in a small town. The people you meet are a huge part of your experience in a place. Best part was getting to learn more Finnish. TLDR, Finland was exactly what I fantasized it would be. Probably not a city that people dream about moving to, but for me, Chicago. I love Chicago from age 6, saw Ferris Bueller, visited a couple times, loved it even more, and then moved here 3 years ago. It feels like home. I absolutely love it here. Sure, the winters can suck, but I appreciate the nicer days so much more. Also, my opinion on Chicago hasn't really changed. I love it more though, and I'm proud to say I live here. New Orleans is deeper and broader than I imagined. 20 years later I have no regrets, only memories that I reflect upon, and smile. When I tell stories I have to leave things out, because the reality is unbelievable. Into the Wild was my introduction to Alaska. I'm from the tropics. Met an Alaskan man, visited in the summer, loved it. Married the Alaskan man, moved in the summer after, finally found out what an interior Alaskan winter was like. Hated it, but husband will not move. Became a reverse Persephone. My cold-weathered husband sends me back to the land of hot weather for a month of the year. Still completely in love with the Alaskan summer. Seattle, WA. Spent my first 30 years living up and down the eastern seaboard from PA to GA. I was in grad school in SC, and inexplicably Seattle just popped in my head one day, no trigger or anything. For the last 6 months of school, 2003, it just consumed me. Sight unseen I needed to be there. So that's what I did. Got my degree, packed up my car with no job, place to live or contacts, and drove to Seattle. It could very well be a self-fulfilling prophecy, but it was everything I wanted it to be. The city has changed quite a bit with the Amazon explosion, but I'm glad I got to live some old Seattle. There's still plenty of treasure to be mined. Sure, the luster is gone, but I have a family now, and still love to explore the city with my daughter. All my old haunts are gone, but the fun now is finding new haunts. It's what we make of it. I'm an American, was a serious Irish dancer my whole childhood. I also play music. I wanted to move to Ireland, and go to university there, and I did. Overall, it was a great experience, especially in terms of local music, dancing, and opportunities to learn more. But also I hated my degree program, and ended up studying abroad, and then transferring to a school in Canada, where I'm much better settled. I still pinch my pennies to go back to Ireland, and visit my friends, and stuff, but I'd never ever live there long term again. Also, I hate cold rainy weather, and have asthmatic reactions to mold, so Ireland's climate was actively trying to kill me the entire time I was there. Good times, no regrets, but also wouldn't repeat. Also, not as popular, but Greece. My maternal grandparents are Greek. It's a big loud friendly group, and had been my entire life. I had a several-month-long gap before grad school, and a great aunt willing to house me, so I moved to Patras. The first few weeks were wonderful. I did all the tourist things, then I realized how forced all of it was. You can't just ever have a friend over, it has to be a major production. The food was wonderful, but every contractor or small business I interacted with took it at a point of pride to tack on added fees or try to scam me. I was stolen from multiple times. The older people, particularly the men, had no personal boundaries at all, and their wives would hand wave off anything. Everything public that wasn't intended for tourists was falling to pieces. It was just very sad considering how proud I had been of my Greek roots until then. Portland, Oregon. It was great for a while when the rent was cheap, and the house I moved into was still populated by friends. After 3 years, the last of which all my friends had moved away, I realized that Portland is a really fun city, but also that cities in and of themselves are not for me, and that they are only bearable for me with friends. It was a great learning experience, if you can call having your car stolen and broken into all the time learning. At the initial cost, $300 a month for a room, it was fantastic. Working 4 days a week, and paying all my rent with tips. Golden way to end one's 20s. It's a great city to visit, and the burbs aren't bad at all. I just got jaded and raw from living downtown. I'd gladly live there again if I had friends around, and didn't have to park on the street. You can only convince yourself that a place is awesome for so long when you're by yourself, and stepping over hobo scat, and broken auto glass constantly. Paris, France. I studied French for a long time, and eventually moved here to do my master's degree. I do love the city itself, always something to do, amazing museums/art/culture/architecture, and even though like all cities it can be crowded/dirty sometimes, I still enjoy it. The thing that gets me is how hard it is to get to know and become friends with the French, Parisians in particular. They are perfectly polite, but if I didn't have a strong foreign student friend community here it would be much more difficult. There are always exceptions, of course. I have a handful of good French friends, but a big factor in why I don't think I can stay in Paris in the long term to settle down, maybe somewhere else in France would be better, is that the coldness can really wear you down. That, and also the bureaucracy. It's unreal. I dreamed of living in NYC as a teen. I was drawn to the theater, the fashion, the excitement. Now I've been living in NYC for about 13 years, basically my entire adult life, and I still love it. But my appreciation has changed. A lot of the things that initially attracted me require lots of money, but I've discovered so many new things and met so many wonderful people that I don't miss the loss of that fantasy. I still feel a thrill when I go running over one of the bridges, and see the skyline. I love not driving, and being able to find practically any food or specialty shop I want. I am very plugged into the arts here, and love to go to live music, readings, lectures, art shows, and performances, so many of which can be enjoyed for little or no money. I definitely see how city life doesn't appeal to many people, but whenever I think of leaving I can't imagine anywhere I might like better. 5 minutes in, and so far I've learned Portland sucks, NYC sucks, Tokyo sucks, Seattle sucks, Melbourne, awesome. Seoul, South Korea, it's my first experience in a big city, and I'm not disappointed. Public transportation is great, food is amazing. I eat a lot of Japanese food here tbh. Depending on where you are in the city, nightlife is crazy. And I find the older parts of the city to be absolutely beautiful. I know for those born and raised in the system it's a whole different story, but for a 20-year-old foreign student, I can say it's not half bad. As far as the negatives go, however, the lack of nature can be hugely depressing. I pay $400 a month for a 50 square feet room. Dining alone can be difficult, and there's always trash everywhere in the streets. Honestly though, I think I had a decent grip on reality before coming here. People expect these places to be like an Instagram-esque dream world. But at the end of the day, it's just another place you wake up, do your groceries, and pay your bills in. All that fun real-life stuff. As a closeted, liberal Asian teenager living in the South, California always seemed like a sort of holy grail to me. So when I got accepted to college there, I decided to take a leap of faith. I was thrilled to find that California can indeed be very liberal, very Asian, and very gay. I think the biggest shock was the Asian factor. There was a surprising amount of Asian food and culture that I didn't know about due to limited exposure at home, like takoyaki for example. It's the best thing ever and I didn't even know it existed. I was also used to always being in the minority back at home, which was no longer the case at school. However, I will say that the cost of living was way too high to live there permanently. I'm happy that I got to live it up during my college years without making a long-term commitment. Moved to London with stars in my eyes. A year later, all I think now is how no one speaks to each other, and there's pigeons everywhere. Tampa, Florida. I'm from the Midwest, and we always associate Florida with spring break, and the beach, and happy fun times. Turns out I live an hour from the beach. Traffic is the worst, largest US city without a commuter rail, and the humidity is always 110%, and about to kill me. You can't really be outside, and it sucks. And second of all, because someone remind me about the driving, and I just have to add that to this comment that the driving is the worst, maybe even worse than humidity. Read my comment below for passionate rage about pulling over for emergency vehicles, or the lack thereof I suppose. I traveled to Melbourne from Sydney a few times, and always fantasized about moving. Did so last year, and haven't looked back. Only downside was it took a while to make friends, but it's a fantastic place. I'm a small-town Midwesterner who really romanticized California, particularly coastal California. I had the opportunity to move there right after college, and it was probably one of the best decisions I'd ever made. Things I liked: the weather was always perfect, even on rainy days. The temperature was still mild. There was always something to do. There were so many different beaches and I never got tired of seeing the ocean. I did more hiking in the first year I lived there than I'd ever done in my home state. Lots of good shows, and music around the Santa Cruz and SF area. So many good restaurants. Plus, it felt good to go back to my tiny ass town and tell people I moved to California. Things I disliked: it's expensive. The traffic is as bad as they say. There also seems to be an air of ignorance with, not all, but some, people native to the area. For instance, when I told people I was from Iowa, someone asked if we had electricity and running water. Another person chimed in that they had a cousin who lived in Montana, which is nowhere even close to Iowa, and most people had no idea where to even find Iowa on a map. When you're from a flyover state, you automatically learn which are the superior states because they get a lot of coverage in media, and entertainment. Went to New York on vacations for a week, and loved it, which helped my decision to study abroad there. After 5 months of living there, I don't want to go back ever again. I ended up hating it. I'm surprised nobody has mentioned hipster capital of the world, Berlin. I moved here 5 years ago for the usual reasons: music, art, cheap beer, affordable living, and while those things are still valid, the bloom is off the rose. Berlin winters last 9 months, and it's not the fluffy snowy kind of winter, it's the just above freezing, gray drizzle every single day kind of winter. The summers are a different kind of annoyance, familiar to anyone who lives in a tourist mecca, masses of clueless visitors clogging up the stores, and congregating en masse at the top/bottom of every escalator in town. It's very, very hard to make local friends. All the locals were raised from kindergarten upwards in the same small group of kids, and they don't need or want any new friends. The imported people usually don't stay more than a couple years, so you can't really build a solid long-term friendship with them either. Dating is no picnic either. As a straight woman, I cannot seem to meet a man who is interested in a monogamous long-term relationship, because Berlin is a magnet for party people and polytypes. Those who do want stable relationships are already in them since many years. The rental market has gotten insane. I saw this movie when I lived in NYC, and it's the exact same screenplay. Rich white kids/foreign investors descend like locusts, and pretty soon no actual normal locals can afford to live here anymore. Already people are having to move to the formerly ridiculed outskirts of town. That being said, the public transport is still outstanding if you came here from USA, where you're lucky to get 2 bus lines per town. The quality of life is still good, lots of good food is very cheap. It's still, due to being corrected, one of the greenest of all the European capitals, and a great place to have as your hub if you like to travel out of town. Edited to add, and it's safe as hell. I never felt so unafraid walking down the street alone anywhere in the US. As long as you stay out of a couple specific parts of town, you don't even get catcalled. It's glorious. TLDR, Berlin isn't as wonderful as I thought, but it's still not a hellhole. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more stories delivered to you. Thanks for listening. See you later.